Shh. Calm down. The show is about to start. Reese on the radio. Turn it up. Turn it up loud. Turn it up loud.
It's like a dream come true.
Turn on your radio. Reese is on the radio.
Yo, let's get it.
Due to the nature of this program, discretion does not exist. It's Reese on the radio. Right now on WTIC News Talk 1080.
We are back and we are popping. We are in action. It is none other than Reese on the radio on NewsTalk 1080 WTIC. Do not fret. We're doing something a little different. So if you're not catching anything online, don't worry about that. We'll get back to that part of the program at some point later on in the show. But I got plenty of news and plenty of views to get into today. So just sit tight and enjoy the show. I've been thinking about this since yesterday, and I knew this was going, and I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks because I knew that this was going to gain some momentum in the future. You may remember that it was on this very show we talked about Illinois doing something similar before it got here, and that was this whole homeschooling thing. And I had always been interested in the homeschooling space. I knew a lot of kids who had been homeschooled. And like all of us public school kids, we didn't treat them like they were weird, right? Not like they were outcasts. They weren't like children of the corn. We sort of treated them like, wow, what's that like to have your mom be your teacher? Because we had experiences with our mom and we said, I don't know if I can sit in the classroom with my mom. And I know that I couldn't get away with some of the stuff that I got away with in public school if my mom or my dad was my teacher, or if I was at home being taught by a homeschooler, even in the household with my parents. And I never knew what that was like as a kid who went to public school. I also used to say this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I used to say something absolutely ignorant. And you homeschool kids, give me a call. Let me know how ignorant this statement was. Don't get me wrong. I know it was. I used to think that homeschooled kids ran a disadvantage with being social. Like they did not understand socializing like we public school kids did in a regular school. We were around other students. We got to know other people. We learned social skills, which of course turned out to be nonsense because look at these kids today. They go to public school and they don't even know how to shake hands or say yes and no, ma'am. But when I was a kid, that was one of my, I wouldn't say questions about homeschooling. I always thought that they were missing out on something a lot broader. Like they're in class. Like what could they possibly learn about interacting with other people? And they didn't. They weren't any more put out than anyone else. Kids are awkward naturally. So I didn't, again, at that time, I was kind of naive. So today, I look at these kids, these homeschool kids, and I look at what the alternative is, as many of you do. And there are a lot of you now who went to public school or have children who have gone to public school and kind of go, man, I wish. Maybe you raised one of those really, really liberal, blue-haired weirdo kids that went to public school. And you're saying to yourself, those aren't my ideals. I didn't raise my kid to put blue dye in their hair and put a piercing through their face. That's against my value system. If only. You start thinking of homeschool in the background, just going, God, maybe I should have done that. I wouldn't have that weird kid running around screaming and hollering about transgenders. So right now, homeschooling is on the attack, or at least it's been attacked, I should say. It's being attacked. And who's it being attacked by? Oh, the usual suspects. Government. Government knows that it lost its way. They know it's lost its way so badly, and people have rejected the government way that they can't even influence, they can't even persuade parents to come back to the fold. Come on back to public school, ladies and gentlemen. We're bigger and better. Our kids are learning more, and they're going off to greener pastures. Public schools. We're here for you. They can't do that anymore. Now when they advertise public schools, it's public schools. Learn about transgender and gender ideology. Come make your kid a homosexual at public schools. Hey, kid barely getting by on reading? Well, we'll F that up completely. Public schools. Hey, kids. Want to be 38% proficient at math and reading? Come on down. That's a selling point at public schools. But Connecticut, they're certain that they should be in charge. They believe that they've got the answers to all of these parents' problems when it comes to raising these kids. They figured it out. But I'd like to run you down a little bit of what I call, memory lane. This is the state that tried to lure people to it by telling them, come on down to Connecticut, bring your businesses. We'll help your employees abort their babies.
With the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, there are many states across the country outlawing a woman's right to make her own reproductive choices. Not here in Connecticut, not as long as I'm governor. So this may be a time for you to think about taking a look at Connecticut as a place to move your business, a place where maybe your employees feel more at home, perhaps you feel more at home, your customers can better identify with our values. With the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, there are many states across the country outlawing a woman's right to make her own reproductive choices. Not here in Connecticut, not as long as I'm governor. So this may be a time for you to think about taking a look at Connecticut as a place to move your business, a place where maybe your employees feel more at home, perhaps you feel more at home, your customers can better identify with our values. With the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe.
That's who they are. That's the state that knows what's best for families and children. State that lures you here by aborting your children. How about a state that has a truancy rate of 20%? How about a state that in 2023 noted that 48% of New Britain high school students were chronically absent, and 29% of kindergartners in the same district were considered truants? Folks, in New Britain, 29% of kindergartners were truant. These are the people who think that they can do better than homeschooler. At least the kid can't be truant at home if he's homeschooled. If he doesn't show up to school, that kid's missing. How about a state that's overwhelmed with DCF's office referrals? Cases that the agents can't even manage. We're talking about babies dying. We got one kid missing for 20 years. 20 whole years. Can you imagine that? That the governor of the state of Connecticut sees a guy who's 32 years old and says, yeah, our problem was he was homeschooled and we didn't keep an eye on him. That's his point of view? Okay. How about Connecticut? We managed to graduate a student with honors who couldn't read or write. Is that a good commercial? Is that a good commercial for them taking over homeschooled kids? How about 54% of its third graders reading below grade level? How about approximately 34% of Connecticut fourth graders scoring at or above the NAEP proficient level in 2024? How about 33% of Connecticut eighth graders scoring at or above NAEP proficiency in 2024? 33%, ladies and gentlemen. How about 48% of Connecticut students in grades 3 through 8 meeting or exceeding proficiency standards in 2024? Just 48%. Ain't even half. How about Connecticut's 4 years adjusted cohort graduation rate for public schools is 90%, they tell us. Think about that. They have a graduation rate of 90% projected for 2025. With all of that failure, they're still going to graduate 90% of public schools in the coming year. Oh, but that's probably because I forgot the most important thing in all of this. The state applied a minimum 50 in its grades to keep kids at least at average. Doesn't matter whether or not the kid shows up to school or not. Doesn't matter whether or not the kid actually brings in homework or does their classwork. They have to get a minimum 50, which would explain why 90% of their graduates are going to graduate. These are the people who believe that they should be in charge of homeschool kids who have an overwhelming success rate. It rivals the public schools more than you know. More than you know. And it's incredible numbers. Incredible numbers. But these people think that they should be in charge. They think they have the answer. They think that they are a recipe for success. And I'm still trying to figure out, how is it? I mean, I would go this far. Let's pull back a little bit. Let's do something that no one has ever done before. I think this is something that would be helpful. Let's find out who are the politicians who are voting for an overall takeover of homeschooling. Let's find out where their kids are going to school. Let's do one step further. Let's demand that we know how well their children are doing in the public school system if they even attend. I think that everyone, especially those parents who showed up yesterday, I think that every one of those parents should demand right now from the news media, get on the phones, call the Hartford Courant, call WFSB, call WTNH, get on the phones. All of you homeschool parents, get on the phones, flood their newsroom lines and say you want them to ask the politicians who are voting for an overhaul of homeschooling in the state, that you demand that you know the people who are voting for that, one, if their kids are going to public school, and two, if they are, how they're doing in those classrooms. Are they passing? Are they failing? Do they have faith in them? You should demand that they know that. Because again, if these homeschool kids are supposed to be subject to the failure that is the public school system, the people who are voting for it should make sure that their kids are going to that same failed public school. Your kid can't go to private school and then tell the rest of us what we're supposed to do with ours. Their feet should be held to the fire. If you make them do that, and I'm telling you, I used to do this. This sounds crazy. but it works. I'll never forget the day that my mom made us call NBC. I'm going to tell a very, very horrible story. It's embarrassing, but it makes a broader point. Do you guys remember the TV show The A-Team? I know you remember this, Roland. Roland, tell me you remember The A-Team. Did you at least watch it were you young enough to watch it at all?
Of course.
Okay. So those of you who remember The A-Team, and this was how I first learned how to be an activist. So there used to be an actor who played the role of Face on, I think it was the first episode of The A-Team, the pilot episode. I don't even know who that actor is today. But he was replaced by Dirk Benedict, who played Starbuck in Battlestar Galactica. And he's a very campy, funny kind of guy. Good looking, but kind of campy. And my mom was furious that they had switched the actor. And my mom made my brother and sister and I call NBC ad nauseum, demanding that they switch it back to the original actor. Till they finally had to respond. We flooded the telephone number, demanding that somebody respond to why the actor was changed. And they did. It worked. That's the same thing that these parents. You have 3,000. How many? 3,000 people showed up? If we'd have believed that to be true, and it looks like it from the videos that I saw, that's what you should be doing. Every one of you should be organizing to call every one of those networks. The Hartford Current, WTNH, WFSB, NBC 12. Not NBC 12, sorry. News 12. Call up everyone and demand somebody in the newsroom. Have those people who wish to take your kids, or at least to, in some way, abscond your kids in the homeschool system, to take your personal rights away. They should answer, for one, whether or not their kids go to school. And if those kids are, going to public school, they should probably do go to school. But if they go to public school, they should demand how well are their children doing in those schools. Make them prove to you that the public school system is working for their kids. Find out how many of those people voting against you send their kids to private school. Or better yet, if they homeschool themselves. That's the only way you're going to get answers. That's the only way you're going to hold these people's feet to the fire. They don't care whether or not you show up. They don't care whether or not you're down there with your bullhorns or you're protesting. They're going to do what they want to do. And I learned this today because I hold this article, and we're going to talk about it later. I'm going to give some props to Stephen Harding on this article in the Connecticut Mirror. I promise you, the news media will only respond when you make them respond. And that's what needs to be done here. I'll give you a follow-up story as to what I mean by that and why I know I'm right. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. More news, more views, and your phone calls at 860-522-WTIC, 860-522-9842. It's Reese on the radio on NewsTalk 1080 WTIC.
Reese on the radio, making sense of the news. Yeah, even when it makes no sense at all. Now on WTIC, News Talk 1080.
I want to give a shout out to Senate Minority Leader Stephen Harding. He's been on this show before, and I'd love to have him back. So Senate Minority Leader, when you're available, just let us know, or send me a text, or have Adam send me a text. Let me know when you're available. I'd love to have you on. But talk about some of the things that are in this Connecticut Mirror article. It's unfortunate that it had to be sullied by Bob Duff, who I call Duff. Duff protest too much. He's in this article in the Connecticut Mirror. Here's the headline. Connecticut Senate GOP, the smallest caucus, is trying to be louder. And I give it to the Senate Minority Leader because that's the point. It doesn't matter whether or not you are underwhelmed as far as representation in the state goes. You have to be loud. and you have to challenge people on logic. And let me just read this. This is the opening of the article written by Paznoikis. Is that his last name? Mark Paznoikis. Here's the beginning of the article. It says, emails from the Senate Republican minority arrive daily in the mailboxes of reporters covering the state capitol. A new strategy for a caucus at its lowest ebb in 40 years. On matters great and small, partisan and not, Connecticut's tiniest legislative caucus is intent on being heard. And that's the thing. So even though the writer understands that, just so you know, that the minority is contacting reporters every day with emails to let them know something is going on with them. But it ain't enough, nor will it ever be. This, and by the way, that's not a critique on Republicans. It's advice. Use it. I'm not using it. But this is important. It's one thing for you guys to be sending emails, but you have a large number of constituents. Whether or not you are the minority, it is not represented by the people in large numbers. Here's what I mean. You are legislating on their behalf, or at least I'd like to believe that you are. But let's take the consideration that maybe you're not. Let's play devil's advocate here. If you are legislating against the will or without the consent of your constituents, let's remedy that. Start talking to your constituents. Republicans alone. Why not? Democrats do it. Democrats talk to their people. They hold rallies. They do whatever. You don't have to hold a rally, but you can find a way to communicate with your constituents. One, let them know that you are contacting the media. You are getting this focus out there. But what you need is their help. Now, look, I'm going to say this to constituents, people who listen to the show, talk on air, call up all the time. You have to assist these Republicans in getting the message out to that news media. You need to be echoing their sentiment as they need to be echoing yours. See, as the writer says, that Republicans are emailing them every day, trying to get these folks to pay attention to the issues that matter. But the news media doesn't think that's enough. They don't bite. Now, when will they? When they're inundated, when they're forced to. That's how this works. Now, when they don't, when they know that they're being flooded with comments and accusations of ignoring you, they know what happens. Okay, we got to cover this, guys. I'm getting phone calls every day. Hey, we do it here. We're getting a lot of phone calls. We're getting a lot of emails. We're getting a lot of letters. We're not covering conservatives or Republicans or libertarians. We need to start covering those stories. People are letting us know that it's our responsibility to let them know what's going on from both sides. Hold them to account. It is their job. And they can't do it on their own. It's got to be a concerted effort on both. I'm going to take this call in a second, but I got Jim on hold first. Let's go to Jim in Wellington. How are we doing, sir?
Yeah, I'll tell you, to your point, we got social media out there. X, I'll use X as an example.
Uh-huh.
You can get quite a bit done going through a social media outlet like X, in order to try to put pressure on the media or either the politicians in any state.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to me that they have any interest in listening at all, because the populace isn't voting them out, isn't sending them a voting challenge to say, we're done with this. We're done with the way the state of Connecticut is run, or with the way the federal government spends money, etc. And I get what you're saying, but at the end of it all, we don't really have any media in the state that looks to go right down the middle and give you the facts.
Well, let's take this like a line by line item as I would in most cases, Jim. what was the representative's name? Was it Ann Hughes? Was that her name? The woman who was caught on a hot mic who said, I tell the governor all the time, tax my folks, they won't even notice. Do you remember that?
Well, I honestly don't remember. I do not.
Okay, but I think that was her name. So let me take that into consideration here. So I understand where you're coming from, and I'm not discounting it because you're looking at this on a macro. I want to be very micro here. What I'm saying is that story should have had more legs, and here's why.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And of course it should, right? Someone's caught on a hot mic, an actual representative saying, oh, I'm going to, and here's the thing. The reason why I knew it had legs, because she was forced to respond to it, because it looked so ugly and so damning, she had to respond to it. So what I'm saying is, right then, you strike while the iron is hot. You immediately ask the people in that district who felt that her comments were off-putting, disrespectful, and dismissive of their tax dollars and who they are. You got to grab that dog. You got to grab that tail, and you got to never let it go. That's my point.
Yeah, well, I get that, but who is it that's going to be the dog? Who is it that's going to go after it?
Well,
who is it that's
her
gonna keep the
entire
pressure
district can't all be Democrats, can they? I'm sure they're not.
No, they can't. But to that point, I don't even remember hearing that.
Exactly.
Honestly, I got to tell you, I don't ever remember hearing that story.
Exactly, because it wasn't covered in the Current. It was actually covered in another offshoot news publication. And then because of that, the groundswell, like it actually started growing in regular or let's just say commonplace news media outlets. Then it became a mainstream story, as it were, because someone independently reported on it. That gained traction. And then what happens when things gain traction? The mainstream news media, always playing catch up, is saying, oh, that's a story now. That's my point.
Well, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, and to try to go about doing that, or actually, we need to go about doing that.
Exactly.
Myself, I use myself as an example. I've been involved here and there, but I don't put the rubber where the road is when it comes to having to go out and do all that type of research, unless it really, really aggravates me. In which case, I will make a phone call, do it what's right, put pressure on somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done that in the past.
That's all it takes is that if people are forced to read those articles or to see that news coverage, if they're made to, then they start thinking about it. Wow, these guys are covering. And not only that, the news reporters are saying to themselves, and I know they do, and I don't care what news reporter you are. There are a lot of news reporters out here who are saying, you know what, we don't really cover the news here. We stenographer, and we don't do real journalism here. We just tell whatever it is they tell us to say, and we write it down. And a lot of those folks feel confined, and they don't feel like real journalists. And they know it.
Well, they're not real journalists.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I can do that. I'll in closing, let me just add this. I get more factual information about what's going on in this country from the news coming out of India, the country of India, coming out of Germany, coming out of two other stations, English. They're English stations.
You're absolutely right. I get so much of my news from the Indians. I get so much of my news from the Indian news sources. It's scary. It's so scary.
It's scary. It's to the point where I don't even watch NBC. I don't watch any of them anymore.
Jim,
it's not worth it.
Jim, you've actually revealed my Achilles heel. I got an online source that gives me the Indian news. They cover American news, and it is so addictive because they never cover it the way we cover it here. I gotta go. I gotta go. Let me get to my buddy Marcus. Actually, let me go to Larry first. Mark, I'm going to carry you over if you don't mind. Larry's in Wallingford. How are you, Larry?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good, sir.
You touched on my favorite subject, education.
Yes.
But one of the things that I thought you left off on your monologue is, where are the teachers union on this one? And when you ask for where the people or the representatives and senators, students or kids are going, why don't we ask, how much money are they getting from the teachers unions?
Very good point. Oh,
during
and
their campaign.
such a good point. That you're absolutely right. Well,
Okay.
I can't get them all, but
And-
you're 100% right. They should find out exactly how much money is coming to them because it's nothing more than a slush fund. That's beyond a shadow of a doubt. And you're right. And as far that's a huge part of where, because it sort of goes to your earlier question, where are the teachers union when it comes to homeschooling? Now, I haven't made this connection yet. Perhaps you can help me before we go to break. If you were to find a connection to why legislature wants to sort of take over homeschooling, where would be the teachers union angle? Because that I haven't been able to place yet. Can you think of anything offhand?
Okay. Yes. During Brian and Company in the morning,
Yes.
they said a lot of the parents wouldn't be able to homeschool anymore. That means they're driving more students to the public education or private, but mostly public education because a lot of these parents can't afford the private schools here in Connecticut. So that means more teachers, more budget, more funding, more special education funding that drives more teachers, which means union dues.
That's right.
And the union dues, because I have two kids that are actually, or one that is a principal, one's that still a teacher, that is paying union dues, and their union dues just went up.
Wow.
So
now that makes sense. I have to take a break in a minute, but you're 100%. I totally get the alignment here. So the part is that if the legislature takes over homeschooling, there are going to be some parents that won't meet that criteria, therefore forcing kids back into the public sector. Is that right?
That's correct. And a lot of them, because look at the legislature. Look at actually what the bill is actually saying. And what the bill is actually saying is they're wiping out parents that have this ability to teach their own kids.
And therefore, you're pretty much chopping in half the homeschooling attendance, making them go back to the public school.
That's half, if not more.
Okay. All right. You know what? Now I need to look into this further because I'm wondering what this new criteria has it been laid out yet?
Well, there's a bill out there.
Okay, that much I know.
The representative or the senator that you just mentioned that you'd love to get on the radio, he was on Brian and Company this morning talking about this exact issue.
Okay, all right, then I'll go back and I'll check.
And I can't take the credit for this, but he was talking about it, and I did a little research after listening to it.
Okay.
Last but not least, and I'll make this real quick, is I called you earlier on the robocalls about solar energy and everything else. I heard back from exactly two people, Paul Ciccarelli, the senator for Wallingford, and, believe it or not, J.D. Vance.
Wow.
And I'm sure it came from his office, but those are the only two politicians that replied to my 71 phone calls in the month of April for solar energy based on green energy, solar energy, American solar, and it all boiled down to a robocall and then transferred to a person that did not speak English, and I'm not speaking against that, but did not speak English very plainly and was hard to understand and could not answer one single question about what a solar panel as far as electricity.
Wow.
I'm an electrical engineer. I know what I'm talking about there.
Larry, I got to go to a break, but thank you, man. I appreciate you. And thank you very much for all of that, buddy. Okay, we got to take a break, and then we'll come back. And if I can't get the Mark, I promise we'll get him at the top of the hour. But stand by there, Mark. We'll get to you in a second. Let's take a break. We'll be back. More news, more views. It's Reese on the radio on NewsTalk 1080 WTIC. No?
Hi, Tom Shattuck here. Nope, no bold political predictions. Today, instead, I'm making a bolder prediction. An opportunity, one might say. How about setting a goal to lose 40 pounds by the 4th with a Awaken 180? Has a different ring to it when you have a finish line, right? 40 by the 4th. Imagine this. Your scale shows 240 today. How about watching that dip to a cool 200 by Independence Day? Or maybe it's reading over 300 like my scale did. How would it feel seeing 260 by the 4th and on your way to losing 80 pounds? Again, like I did with Awaken 180. Looking back, it took me only 5 weeks to drop my first 40. Of course, that's not the norm, but we'll just say I'm an overachiever. Regardless, if you set your goal and follow the program, you'll crush your goal by the 4th. Then ring Independence Day in, shirt off, confident, martini and burger in hand. Celebrate reaching your goal, knowing you'll keep the weight off thanks to free support for life. 40 by the 4th. Set your goal and attain it with your long-term solution for weight loss. Online at awaken180weightloss.com. That's awaken180weightloss.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy and founder of Wesley Financial Group. And I want to set the record straight. I am not an attorney. I've never wanted to be an attorney. And the truth is, I really don't even like attorneys. If I sound like an attorney or if I look like an attorney, I'll apologize. But what I've learned in my 15 years in the timeshare cancellation business is you don't need to be an attorney to get folks out of their timeshare. At Wesley, we've helped over 40,000 families cancel their timeshare without me being an attorney. And I want to share with you how we do it. Just give my office a call, and you will not talk to an attorney. And I guarantee if we take you as a client, we'll get you out of your timeshare, or you'll pay nothing.
Call now for your free information kit. 800-714-9090. 800-714-9090. 800-714-9090.
At University of Maryland Global Campus,
1 minute.
give our students credit where credit is due. Credit for deciding in the middle of rush hour traffic to go back and get their bachelor's and a promotion. Credit for managing 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a full-time job to pursue an MBA. And credit for serving in the military by day so they can study cybersecurity at night. For over 75 years, we've been helping students receive the credit they deserve. With more than 135 degrees and certificates, students at UMGC can use prior learning or relevant experience to earn up to 90 credits toward a bachelor's, and graduate students can transfer up to 12 credits toward their master's. At UMGC, you'll find everything from online to hybrid courses and lifetime career services to scholarship opportunities, making your education journey fast and affordable. Apply now and save with no application fee. Classes start May 14th. Learn more at umgc.edu. Certified to operate in Virginia by Chev.
It's Reese on the radio. Ask your doctor if common sense is right for you. On News Talk 1080 WTIC.
I know I'm not going to have enough time for Mark, so I apologize, Mark. I promise I'll get you to the top. Give me a minute. When we come back from this break, as promised, I said I was going to do it today because last week, I know I played it on Friday, but I was going to play it this week. So the Solomon Schechter School, that issue that's going on there, there have been a whole bunch of different details that have come forward since then. I think I'm going to talk to Mark about them a little bit, or he may have something else to address. But we'll talk to him about that in a little bit at the top of the hour. And then I will play you 2 of the parts of a very long I spoke to the second parent for about 20, maybe even 30 minutes. And I had to splice it up. So there are 2 parts that I'm going to play today. One's 6 minutes, another one is 4 minutes, which is a breakdown of one. This is a parent who, after hearing about the tickling, picked up their child to ask if their child had been tickled. And what she found was alarming. She then talks about everything that led up into the arrest of the teacher, then explains the aftermath and her relation, or her, let's just say, how she dealt with the school, or how the school dealt with her in the second part. So it's 2 parts. It's going to come up at about 4:11, so stand by for that. Again, it is edited for content. 2, the person's voice has been altered, and it is much clearer than the last one because it was very fast and it seemed a little muffled, but this one will be very clear. So these are new details. This is a third parent, second parent I interviewed, but a third parent who contacted the school about their child being tickled. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's get to the weather and traffic. Jason Catarina and Mark Christopher, they're in your BPS Traffic Center. Hey, Mark.
It's Reese on the radio. And don't say we didn't warn you on News Talk 1080 WTIC. WTIC.
Oh, man, I got this great clip from MSNBC about due process. I was watching it. Oh, did they all get their gut checked? It was so bad. Anyway, let me get to Mark in West Hartford real quick. What's going on, big guy?
So I'll make it quick because I know you're all primed there. So first of all, on two things. First of all, the Republicans in Connecticut. You know how I feel already.
I know. I was thinking about you as I was talking about it.
Well, let me just get this out, and then I'll move on real quick, and then I'll let you go. Steve Harding, Rob Sampson, Themis Cleridis, Greg Fishbein, and especially Aaron Stewart. These aren't red state Republicans, people.
Right.
Those are the most prominent Republicans we have in Connecticut. I prompted Stephen Harding so many times over a couple of years to call in, to get involved, to assist me. The first time he made a call into WTIC to Tom Schechter. Now, think of all the things that he could have came in and talked about what's going on in Connecticut, especially as a minority leader. Guess what his topic was?
I don't know.
Just it could, and I know it could be education, right?
Sure.
Could be public safety.
Yeah.
Taxes, tolls. Nope. He called in to talk about the environmentalists that put dye on the 18th green at DPC. That's his first call into WTIC and Tom Shattuck's show. That's how disconnected they are. Messaging.
Did you miss my whole point? Hold on, that was exactly what I said. I did. Listen, that was the whole crux of what I said, Mark. And that was, again, it's one thing to go to the media or send them emails talking about whatever it is your issue is of the day. But you have got to coincide with the Republicans of the state to know that the things that you're emailing the press about are the things that they care about. And if you are indeed emailing them about whatever the issue is, get them on board to start, so they can pressure the news media to cover those stories, which I think lends itself to what your point is that perhaps the reason why they're not contacting their constituents about it is because they're not aligned with them, which is, again, that's why I said I played devil's advocate. You're 100% right. I'm right on. You and I are.
You were giving props to Steve.
Oh, no.
You were giving props to Stephen Harding.
I was giving props to Stephen Harding that he got the media to actually cover a damn story about Republicans. That's the praise that I'm giving them.
They do that, but no. But they do that all the time.
I know.
That's why Rob Sampson's name's out there. It's a manufactured outrage. It's a manufactured soundbite of outrage.
I totally hear you. Let me get to weather and traffic. I get you. Let's get to weather and traffic again with Jason Caterina and Mark Christopher in the BPS Traffic Center. Hey, man.
President of the Chris Murphy Fan Club, Reese on the radio on News Talk 1080 WTIC.
All right, it's Reese on the radio. We're back. News Talk 1080 WTIC. As promised, I'm going to play this video for you, or this audio, I should say, for you. This is, again, a second parent I interviewed. You heard the first interview a little more than a week ago. And I talked to a second parent who was the third parent to report to the school that their child was tickled. This is, of course, the case of the Solomon Schechter Day School in West Hartford. And this story has taken a bunch of turns since then. And we'll talk about that maybe on the back end of this piece. The first piece is this parent is talking about, or we're pretty much left off where she picks up her daughter after hearing about the tickling incident from another parent. And because of her shock, she ran and just grabbed her kids. And this is how she describes that event when it took place.
After I spoke with my daughter and she said there was tickling going on, I decided at that point that I would send her back to school the next day, but I did want to speak to them, to the school. So I emailed one of the administrators and I said, I'd like to speak to you about a really important...
I think I screwed that up. I apologize. This should be it. I apologize.
I can say I was not thrilled with how it had been handled up to...
Nope, I was right.
After I spoke with my daughter and she said there was tickling going on, I decided at that point that I would send her back to school the next day, but I did want to speak to them, to the school. So I emailed one of the administrators and I said, I'd like to speak to you about a really important, somewhat urgent matter. that next day. And she was out that day, so she emailed me and said, let's talk tomorrow morning. We scheduled a time to speak the next morning, and I touched base with one other parent, not the first one who reported, but a second parent who had reported, I believe, the day before me or something along those lines. And at that point, she told me that she was also going to send her daughter back to school, but her daughter had said that, yes, she was also tickled. So at this point, we're talking about at least 3 kids. Her daughter told the teacher directly, I don't like it when you tickle me and I don't want you to do it, with the urging of her mother, which is not easy for a child of this age to do. And when I was speaking to this mother, I was trying to come up with solutions. I wanted to go to the school and say, we are partners here. Let's talk about what is and isn't okay so that moving forward, we can have more appropriate behavior. And what I came up with at that time was that the barometer should be, in my opinion, that if it would be inappropriate with a teenager, then it would be inappropriate with a young child, whether they've gone through puberty or not, right? The prepubescent child should be treated with the same respect of their body as you would expect for a teenager. And so I went into the conversation. It was very clear there's tickling going on. And at that point, the person I spoke to said, yes, we know there's tickling. It's not happening anymore. It will not be happening anymore at this point in order to protect, the school and the teacher himself. He will not be touching the kids at all. And he will also not be alone in the room with the kids, which to me was comforting. But I was very clear in the meeting, I'm not okay with tickling. I don't think it's appropriate. And I even said that tickling specifically is a problem for me because of the fact that a child might involuntarily laugh. When I spoke to my child, I even said, do the other kids like being tickled? She said, yes. I said, how do you know? She said, because they laugh. And we know for a fact there are at least 2 children who were not comfortable with it. My daughter did not pick up on that because laughter can be an involuntary response to tickling. So I said all of these things in the meeting. I was reassured it would not happen again. And I continued to send my children to school. Now, I do know there was another report the following week. I think it's important to note that both the second parent who reported and I, the third parent, told the school that we had spoken to the first parent. And I again, it's my belief, and I'm speculating what's going through people's heads, but it's my belief that at that point we were maybe dismissed because we were kind of lumped into the same category as this first report. And so no further action was taken to either investigate or report what we had said. And it wasn't until another parent came forward the following week and did not indicate that they had spoken. And I know this, through discussions with parents.
Just so we don't get lost in the weeds. First parent had reported, second parent had reported, third parent had reported to the school. If I'm understanding this correctly, by the time we get to the third parent, the teacher has never been removed from the classroom.
So I am the third parent, and my understanding is the school contends that he was removed temporarily while they investigated, but my understanding is he wasn't actually removed from the classroom. He just happened to be out because his child was sick. When I reported and when the parent before me reported, there was no removing him from the classroom at that point. And again, it wasn't until a fourth parent came forward who decidedly did not mention any of the other parents who she knew reported that they took any action on an administrative basis. After which point he did not come back, because I believe that at that point, the DCF report came from an external place, so from an outside, from someplace that was outside of this school. After I spoke with my daughter and she said there was tickling.
So that's where this pretty much left itself. At this point, teacher hasn't been removed. And this parent gets a little leery about how this is being handled. But that didn't happen immediately. That happened after the fact. Once the word had gotten out that there was an arrest made, of course, people began to talk. People at a formal school, parents who went to the school, administrators, all started communicating amongst themselves. Story wasn't really widespread. If it were widespread anywhere, it was within the community of people who went to the school. So parent number 2 explains that there was a forum for people to talk about this and discuss this. But that's where it got even weirder. And, if I might add, daunting for parents who are concerned about their children at the school.
I can say I was not thrilled with how it had been handled up to that point. And then when the arrest happened, we got an email from the head of school. All of the parents in the entire school community got an email saying that this had happened and saying what the school did and how it all played out. And the first thing that struck me was that the email was written in a way that made it seem like only 2 reports were made, and made it seem that the teacher was placed on leave immediately after the first report, which, as we know, is not exactly the truth. I had asked very clearly when I spoke to them and I reported, I had said, we need transparency. Parents are talking, we don't know what's going on, and that is worse than just telling us. Say, this is going on, we're looking into it, we're working on it, make us feel like partners. And in that conversation, they even said, yes, ideally, in this kind of a situation, the school would take the lead on the messaging, but obviously parents are already talking.
So it is your estimation that the school ran interference in protection of itself and did not in any way involve or at least consider parents' concerns for how this played out. From first report to fourth report, you believe there was a lot of protection of the school and not so much as being forthcoming about, here's where we are, here's what we found out. We want to make sure that everyone, or if there's anyone who has felt they were treated inappropriate or their child was treated inappropriately, to please come forward so we can, either add to this police report or add information to the investigation. None of that was going on. You kind of felt like you immediately became at odds with the school, or the school became at odds with you. Is that fair to say?
To an extent, yes. So I definitely think that in a perfect world, when something like this comes up, first of all, parents need to know. And I understand that there are HR considerations. I'm aware of this. I know that. But there are ways to communicate to parents, a concern has been raised. If you have any concerns, and you can say it, in a very vague way, whatever it is. I'm not a lawyer, but whatever it is, there's ways to bring these things up so that parents are aware of what's going on, at least to a certain extent, and say, if you have any concerns or if your child has brought up anything that's concerning, please come to us. So that we feel like we're in the know and that we're informed and we're partners with the school, as opposed to, oh gosh, don't let anyone find out. When the information about the arrest, came out, at that point there was some amount of social media attention on the article, and with that social media attention, some people, there began to be buzz of people from previous schools where this teacher had worked saying, oh, yeah, this is that same guy who, was let go from whatever. I mean, the way people talk online. And those reports started to come out on social media with that little buzz, which definitely kind of put up red flags for me, as far as this has happened with this person before he came to our school. And at that point, I sent a message to a parent group chat for the classroom. And in that group, in the message, I essentially wrote that I understood that the group chat of parents was not necessarily the place for this discussion, but I do know that there's more to the story, that more people came forward than indicated in the email, and that if anyone would like more information, please let me know. I will create a separate group chat. I can say.
So that's pretty much where we are. One of those pieces did not get through. I apologize for that. But anyway, that's pretty much where this story lies, with the exception of some other things that have kind of been talked about online. I'm not going to go down that road as of yet. But as the story progresses, there will be some other details that will soon to come out. Whether or not it actually gets any attention, who knows? But as that part of the story comes out, we'll keep you informed. But as I said, in the beginning of all of this, there were certain individuals who said that there were inaccuracies in the interview that we did with the first parent. I'd love to hear what they think about the second parent and if there are any other inaccuracies. But I will say this, and I think this part is really, really important. I was looking over my show, which I post online, and you can actually listen to the show by going to reesonradio.com. And I usually post it probably about an hour and a half after the show airs. And people who listen to the show, I can actually tell where you're listening to the show. So I know, like this week, Woodbury's listening to the show in great numbers. After that, it's East and West Hartford. But I noticed that one particular show, when we talked to the first parent, miraculously, I got someone listening to the show in Tel Aviv. And I just want to say, thank you very much, Tel Aviv. And that one person listening to the show. Sending you a special shout out. You get my meaning. Let's take another check of the weather and traffic with Jason Caterina and Mark Christopher in the BPS Traffic Center. Hey, Mark.
Stay locked in. Reese on the radio is on WTIC News Talk 1080.
You know what? I'm going to do it. What the hell?
Do I look that stupid? Yes, you do. Stupid as can be. This could very well be the stupidest person on the face of the earth.
Okay, so the stupidest thing I read today, unfortunately, has much more to do with listeners than it has to do with a news article. But they both are associated, okay? So I get this article. Here's the headline. Connecticut Mirror. Minority contractors say Connecticut not following its own rules. Proposed fix doesn't go far enough. Connecticut requires 25% of state contracts to be set aside for small minority-owned businesses. Studies show that it's falling short. Why is that the stupidest thing I read today? as I keep trying to explain to my very limited and small black audience. You live in a racist state. Get used to it. Okay? Get used to it. I am unfortunately sick and tired of having to explain to the limited African-American listeners to this program. Your state is blue. Your state is Democrat. Your state is racist. Now, I don't care what Democrat here is listening to that and getting angry. Prove me wrong. You can't. This is the state that allows kids to die, usually minority kids, to die in the state that DCF ignores. Why? Because they have a mandate to keep black kids in abusive homes with their children. They keep the children in the home with the black parents because they refuse to remove them. Why? Because of their color. They are also the ones who believe that African-American business starters can only own weed operations. They do not see you as equal. They see you as less than. And you assist them in this nonsense. Do you not get it? You assist them in this nonsense when you constantly tell them that you need them to provide for you. Because you're black, impoverished, poor, and put upon. Please stop being surprised that these folks are not giving you contracts. They need you in perpetual poverty for that reason, because you're beneath them. Okay? I at least recognize that. You call me an Uncle Tom and a sellout because I refuse to adhere to the Democrat way. Well, you can stay on that plantation all you want. I won't. Okay? So please stop complaining to me about the racism that is put upon you, about the very racists you tend to vote for overwhelmingly. Okay? Now, for some non-racist traffic and weather, we go to Jason Caterina. Because the traffic affects all of us, no matter what color you are. That's why you come to WTIC. Mark Christmas in the BPS Traffic Center.
The self-proclaimed love child of Rush Limbaugh.
They're running a strange program, y'all.
Reese on the radio on News Talk 1080 WTIC.
Well, here it is, a Tuesday, and a whole bunch of stuff is about to happen in the next day. So I don't know whether or not you guys are following James O'Keefe or you've heard anything about this James O'Keefe thing, but apparently this video is supposed to drop tomorrow. He claims it's supposed to be the biggest story of his career. I'll be watching it immediately. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Also, tomorrow, we've got to do it. Whack Job Wednesday. The reason why I got to do it is this story from a former George W. Bush administrator talks about this $21 trillion underground city that was built. It was in the New York Post yesterday. I want to talk a little bit about it tomorrow. And apparently it's supposed to be for politicians and the elites. It made me think of, what's that movie, Deep Impact? That horrible, but it just wasn't a good movie. It was just really disappointing. But that movie, Deep Impact, where they're grabbing, the smartest, the brightest people, and they're all supposed to go inside this, and everybody else is left to die. It's insanity. I don't know if that's the most realistic you could get to an extinction level event. I kind of feel like if that were the case, like, what do you do? Like, how do you make yourself viable to be in this $21 trillion fortress underground? And would you even go? I'm not good in enclosed areas. Like, that's not my thing. I'm claustrophobic and I'm afraid of heights, which makes no sense. But, I'm a weirdo that way. I couldn't imagine living underground for a considerable amount of years, never seeing daylight. I don't care how realistic you can make it. There was this is when I knew, and I'll take the phone calls in a second, 860-522-WTIC. There is a short story that I loved as a kid. Let me see if I can look it up. All Summer in a Day. Anybody remember it? Yes, it is by Ray Bradbury. Anybody remember that story? If you did when you were a kid. And it's a story set on Venus, which is weird because after the apocalypse, you don't go closer to the sun. You usually go away from it. That's why Elon wants to go to Mars. But the book is set on Venus. And on Venus, it rains all day, every day. Except for about, I think, an hour. The sun comes out. And the story is about a young lady named Margot. I'm almost certain. Yes, she is. Margot. I know this story like the back of my hand. Story is about a young lady named Margot who comes to Venus having seen the sun. She knows what it's like, but these kids have lived on Venus all their lives and have never seen the sun. And she is describing it. Everyone is in the classroom trying to describe what the sun is like. And she tells them what the sun is. Sun's like this and the sun's like that. And they ridicule her because, you don't know what it's like. And because she's an outcast. And it's every 7 years before you ever get to see the sun. Now, I'm saying to myself, could I be living in some underground bunker for 20 years, never seeing the sun, never going outside, never taking a walk? And inside this book, Ray Bradbury writes, they have the kids under the sun lamps so they can get their vitamin D. It's a whole elaborate thing. It's one of my favorite books. I'm serious. It's one of my favorite books. I remember it like it was yesterday. I read this as a kid. And as you all know, I'm not much of a reader, so I wouldn't even talk about this book unless I really enjoyed it. But I think about that when I heard this story about the $21 trillion underground bunker. I don't even know whether or not, I almost feel like I would put my head between my legs and kiss my butt goodbye. Because if the choices are underground bunker, I know some people are probably saying, no, I'm staying alive. I don't know. Living in an underground bunker in a cave, to me, fake. Every day I would be thinking, what if there's an earthquake? What if the whole thing caves in? Like coal miners must fear all the time. 860-522-WTIC. Again, I know I'm a little off the deep end. Jeff is in Marlboro. How are you, Jeff?
Hey, not bad. How you doing, man?
I'm all right, sir.
Yeah, so what you were just talking about there, I'm kind of with you, man. If there was going to be a giant asteroid hit the Earth,
yeah,
okay, I hope it strikes me right in the face.
So you're not for the underground bunker either?
Not too much, no. But the other thing I wanted to say is what you were talking about before you went to break. I wanted to make sure, I think that I understood what you were saying, but I wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
You say Connecticut's a racist state. You're not talking about us. You're talking about how they treat
I'm talking about how the Democrat majority party treats minorities in this state and across the country.
You can't do this on your own. You need this program. You need that program. You need me in office. You need that.
Exactly. The presumption of your inability to survive. The nanny state.
We're not talking about how people like you and I treat each other. Because I
exactly.
work with people. I work with people. I'm Irish. I'm about as light as you get, and I work with people about as dark as you get, and all in between. And we have no animosity towards each other. We all get along great.
Because they know, because you see each other as equals. I get this text message all day from a listener all the time. And you know what he says to me, Jeff, that drives me up the wall? He always says this, and when he says it, and by the way, this shows you exactly how cookie cutter leftists and Democrats and, unfortunately, African Americans who fit those criteria, how cookie cutter they are. He asked the same question they all do. He says, what has the Republican Party done for black folks? And my response is, that's where your problem is that government and political parties are not supposed to do things for you. They are here to get out of your freaking way so that you can prosper. They are not here to do anything for you. We are not the nanny state. The Republican Party wants you to be free, not be under their rule.
They're there to tell you what, to do what we tell them to do.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the other way around. I mean, they never understand. It's like, what has the Republicans ever done to us? I'm like, because you're relying on a Democrat Party to do for you because they don't think you could do it on your own. That's why you vote for them.
Exactly.
So,
I just wanted to clarify.
No, that's exactly what my point is. And I said to them, they don't understand that the party that they're with doesn't see them as equal, doesn't see them as achievers. They see them as nothing more than the children that they are here to raise and to uplift and to take care of from the cradle to the grave. That is who they are. They do not see them. They see all white people as people, we'll tax them and then we'll restrict them. Black folks, we'll take care of them.
And apparently, according to these Democrats, I guess Latino people are just toilet cleaners. So
exactly. And all you have to do is listen to their own words. Who's going to clean your toilets, Donald Trump? Who's going to clean the bathrooms when we go on vacation? Who's going to clean the hotels when you're visiting abroad?
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, dude, these are their mouths. Again, I know who they are, so when they come here and they talk about Connecticut's being racist, you think? I'm not stunned.
Yeah, because you're running it that way, you know?
Exactly. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you. Let's go to Mike in Plainville. Hey, Mike.
They talk about these underground bunkers in the East, Virginia, Maryland, and so forth and so on that were built in the 40s and 50s. Now, people have come forward. They said that this is Tonka toy stuff compared to what they got out in the West and the Southwest. They've got complexes that go down 30 stories, 30 stories in the middle of nowhere. They've got rail lines all the way connecting all these facilities for government and certain military personnel. They've come forward and they said they're still working on them. There's people that live out there, Indians in Arizona and New Mexico, that have heard drilling under their feet at night.
Really?
Yeah, it's ongoing. They keep building them. People would pass out. They'd have a goat faint if they found out what was going on out there.
30 floors or 30 floors underneath the ground.
300 feet.
Oh, goodness gracious.
300 feet. And they say they have underground high-speed trains that are in tunnels that are wide enough to put two 737s wingtip to wingtip.
Could you live there? Could you be down there? What would be like if you couldn't be there at all?
Stay up here. I would stay up here. I mean, I've had 70 great years on this earth. I said I don't want to spend the next whatever.
I got to be honest with you, Mike. Mike, I got to be honest with you. I really thought that I would be the weirdo here. I thought I was going to stand here alone and be the only person who wouldn't go into the bunker. I knew it. I had a strange feeling.
You don't want to spend time in a bunker with people with severe hygiene problems and coughing and sneezing and who knows what else. No, it's not for me. I like to die happy. That's it.
I totally hear you, buddy. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Let's go to Fred in Middletown. Hey, Fred. Fred, can you hear me?
Hey.
Yes.
Real quick, did you see the Simpsons episode where there's a meteor heading for the Earth, and Ned Flanders is the only one with
an underground bunker?
A bomb shelter.
No.
Well, it's not underground, actually. It's above ground.
Oh, it's just a bomb shelter?
So who gets in? Yeah, and everyone, why are you going to be there? Well, we're going to need comedy, so Krusty gets in, and, we're going to need a doctor, so Dr. Hubbard gets in. And
right.
And the last one, so finally, Ned goes outside, and he's the last, he's out. It's his shelter.
It's his shelter, and he's voted out?
Well, yeah. He's the one guy they don't need, And so he starts singing "We Shall Overcome," and one by one they all go outside and stand with him. And then something the size of a chihuahua's head hits this structure and it collapses. But yeah, of course there would be underground cities, really, and it wouldn't be claustrophobic. I mean, I don't get the underground. I'm sure they've got like the best lighting and everything. It wouldn't be like you said, the bunkers. It's not a bunker.
Yeah, I'm almost certain it's sort of like walking into like a warehouse at Amazon. It's probably 100 feet, up ahead, above you. It's not like you're cramped in or anything like that. But there is a large degree of that. That first of all, it's the knowledge of knowing that I'm underneath acres of rock.
Be a feeling to that.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I don't know about that, but there's got to be a feeling. Your body knows it's underground.
Right.
The electricity, everything's got to be different. Yeah.
Doesn't
in the moment you?
No, I was just going to ask you. Isn't there something? Maybe I should ask my wife about this. But I almost feel like doesn't environment sort of affect your body a certain way, like just the way sunlight does? Like when you're in a certain
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so I can imagine if you're in this bunker for 20 years, your body would react to the lack of sunlight, the lack of particular air or oxygen. Like if it's pure oxygen that's being pumped in, would that be?
The air would probably be cleaner. I think they could make all that, but your body knows. I mean, like people who've like lived in caves as a scientific experiment,
right.
Like everything changes, And when they tried living in that dome there, that self-contained thing, I forget the details, but it didn't work. Yeah, no, it sounds like a ridiculous bummer, man. Like, who the hell? And then Fauci has he saves his sperm, he's ready to repopulate the earth with Fauci's. I don't know if you knew that about him.
What?
Yeah, check it out. Fauci has like a private sperm bank, dude. Yeah.
I don't even need to know.
He's ready.
I don't even know. There's one part of me that says, wow, that's interesting to know. There's another part of me that goes, ew.
I wish I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. It's like, might just cut past for me. Yeah. But the kind of freaks that Democratic Republic down there?
I don't know. But I knowing that Dr. Fauci tidbit, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with
Jesuit.
I don't think I'm done. I think, he's a Jesuit.
Yes.
That sounds like a Jesuit thing to do, without a doubt.
Yeah. Well, sorry to dump that on you today.
That's okay.
I didn't mean any harm.
I can't wait to share it with the wife. I just want to see the look on her face when I tell her. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you. Oh, that's just weird. I feel like I know a little too much about. I thought it was bad enough that he was doing these experiments on beagles. Now I know this. I'm just, ugh. Let's get another check of the weather and traffic. Jason Caterina and Mark Christopher in the BPS Traffic Center. Mark?
All right, Reese, thank you very much. Well,
the hour that packs a punch. It's Reese on the radio on WTIC News Talk 1080.
I want to read this little ditty that I just got from a listener. And it says this, that I have never, the individual is African American. So let me read it. I've never taken handouts or public assistance in any form from any government entity, whether local or federal. However, not everyone is as fortunate as I was. Non-Hispanic white people accounted for 44.6% of adult SNAP recipients and 31.5% of child recipients in 2020. About 27% of both adult and child recipients were Black. Hispanic people who can be of any race accounted for 21.9% and 35.8% of child recipients. Now, let me explain to you why sending that to me is utter nonsense. Let me explain to you why it's nonsense. Because it doesn't address what I said. And if you can't address what I said, therefore you make what I said factual. So let's make sure that we get this clear. I said what the Democrat Party thinks of minorities in the state is irrefutable. Talking about SNAP, which has nothing to do with bigotry, that has to do with finances and financial stability. That has nothing to do with race. Of course, more white people use SNAP there are more white people, statistically. It's like living in a black neighborhood and then arguing, why ain't they arresting no white people here? You don't have any white folks to arrest. Get some white folks, if they do something criminal, we'll arrest them. It's a silly point. I keep trying to explain this to you. Please stop coming at me with the nonsense, okay? I know this is probably how you debate with your friends and other ne'er-do-wells who don't do this for a living, but I do. I am not some guy who just fell off a turnip truck. I'm well-versed in this. Your state is racist. Deal with it. If you keep noticing racism in a blue state, if you keep noticing racism in the places run by Democrats, it's probably because Democrats are racist. Right? All of it is associative. Ain't no Republicans here. Can't be. I'm trying to make this point all the time. Let's get back to the weather and traffic with Jason Caterina and Mark Christopher in the BPS Traffic Center. Hey.
Reese on the radio is getting ready to drop some knowledge on WTIC News Talk 1080.
Drop it. We're back. It's News Talk 1080 WTIC. Taking your phone calls in a second. I do have to address this in the next hour. We're going to talk about this New York Post article. 7 children died in abusive New York City homes because of progressives. And they say that it's racist to save them. And again, this is what I was talking about earlier. I saw this story. I remember it vividly, and I'll tell you just briefly before we go. No, we don't even have a break. We're taking your phone calls in a second. I thought it was top of the hour. So anyway, just let me tell you this quick story before I go to the phones. It's a young man, friend of mine. I want to say, I can't call him a friend, an associate. I knew who he was. He was more friends with a friend of mine than he was a friend of me, but I knew him casually through that friend. And he worked a lot. He was very much in his own thing. In fact, sadly, this was a guy who was a high school dropout who had worked himself to get a GED and was an engineer at NASA. I was so fascinated with this guy. I was about 19, maybe 20 at the time. And when I met him, I was overwhelmingly fascinated with him because of where he came from and what he talked about. And he was telling his story about working at NASA and being an engineer. And I loved stories like his because it made me, a kid from the hood, know, holy crap, things are possible. All the rest of the nonsense I had heard from the usual rabble-rousers, this was evidence that what they were talking about was bubkiss. Anyway, but he told this one story that always, the thing that was driving him crazy. His life wasn't perfect, and he had this woman who he was involved with, and they had 2 children, 2 daughters. And the woman and he broke up because she was on crack. She was addicted to crack cocaine. And she was so horrible of a person, she was turning tricks in the apartment where she and the children lived for crack. This man, and again, this is late 80s, early 90s. I want to say 89, 90. This man did everything in his power to get his daughters out of that home. He was in court all the time, family court, over and over again. And I'm listening to this story, and again, as a lay person hearing that story going, what's the hubbub, bub? What do you mean you can't get your daughters back? Are you sure? Like, I almost thinking he's telling this story with a degree, if not a great degree, of exaggeration. There's no way that his wife or the former, mother of his children is pulling tricks in the apartment where the daughters stay and is doing crack cocaine and he doesn't have custody. There's no way. But he said he couldn't get custody. Why, he said? It rings in my head like a bell. Because the judge said that I don't care what the circumstances are. No matter what, it is wrong to separate children from their mother. The mother is the nurturer. The mother takes care of the kids when they are in trouble. The father works. And his excuse for not giving it to the father, if there were ever a punishment for the guy accomplishing something, the judge told him, you work at NASA. How much time could you be spending at home working at NASA? As if him working at NASA and working his fingers to the bone, dropping out of high school, getting a GED, and becoming an engineer working at NASA was a slight. And you look at all of these stories about kids who have left to stay in homes because they refuse to take them out. Why? Because they don't want to separate these families, these children from their mothers, who in one case in this article, and I should have marked it so I know exactly where it was, but let me give you, I'll summarize what the article talks about. One of the children in this caseload that they're talking about in the New York Post had died at the hands of his mother. When the police arrived, the child was in a closet, tied by his hands, hanging from the pole that he was hanging from his wrists, from the pole in the closet that she was beating him from. That's what was going on. That's in New York. Need I say more? Let's go to the phones. 860-522-WTIC. Tom in Bristol. How are you?
Reese, is that me?
Yes, sir. Hi, Tom.
Oh, hi. How are you doing? We talked very, very briefly yesterday. I wanted to talk about the homeschooling.
Please.
The Democrats called a homeschooling informational hearing.
Yes.
Yesterday, and it was based on a horrible case. And the news actually broke in March. Maybe you heard the story about the
Westbury young man.
No, it was in Waterbury.
Waterbury. Sorry, I said Westbury. Waterbury young man. Yes.
And so it had nothing to do with homeschooling.
Of course not.
Then the mother never even claimed, the stepmother never even claimed that she was homeschooling or anything, but he had been in school and for 5 years in a Waterbury public school, and it was reported over and over by the teachers and the principal that the kid was starving and he was bruised, and they went to the home and the mother said, "Oh, no, nothing wrong here," and they just left. So eventually the kid disappeared.
Yep.
And it turned out, like years later, he was still being abused.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the Democrats used this as a pretense to call a homeschooling informational hearing, and it was just incredible, like what they were trying to do. They were trying to regulate homeschoolers because of this bizarre case that had nothing to do with homeschooling. They had the head of DCF there. They had the head of the State Department of Education.
I cannot believe that DCF had the audacity to show their face at this hearing.
I know. That's what the Republicans on the committee were saying. This should not be about homeschooling. It should be about DCF and about the police department in Waterbury that went to the house and never did anything. But anyway, it was like they kept pushing and pushing. All we want to do. We know that most homeschoolers are families are very legit and they're doing a great job, blah, blah, blah. But we just want to regulate, to make sure that nobody slips between the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the proverbial camel trying to get his nose under the tent and promising that all they wanted was to just their nose, and it was so obvious that it was a power play to regulate homeschooling.
Let me read.
There was a wonderful
Tom. Let me read this piece. Right. So there was an article in the Connecticut Inside Investigators. A journalist by the name of Brandon Whiting wrote an extensive article about it. By the way, if you're looking for it, go look it up on Connecticut Inside Investigators. Let me read a paragraph from the story because it aligns into this thing about associating the Waterbury case with homeschooling. He says CHRE maintains and updates a national database on instances of abuse and neglect of homeschoolers called Homeschooling's Indivisible Children. The database findings, which were released in July of 2024, identified 475 cases of neglect or abuse in total and 211 fatalities since when? Try this on for size. This is what they're calling like an existential issue in homeschooling. They found 211 fatalities. You want to know what year they put this survey out to? And again, this is 2024. How far back do you think that study goes from 2024 to get 211 fatalities? How far back do you think it goes?
It's a national figure, or
it's a national database. 211 fatalities in homeschooling. How far back? Now, remember, it ends at 2024. How far back, as far as years, do you think that those fatalities go?
I'm guessing maybe to the 70s.
You're close. 211 fatalities since 1986. That's a national total in homeschooling. Connecticut thinks that that's something to reference.
Really?
We have more fatalities in public school in Connecticut than that number since 1986. Are they insane? This, again, the fact that anyone even mentioned this is a non-issue. It identified 148 cases that involve extreme abuse that is likely meets the most definitions of torture. Again, that's still national. Since 1986, 148 cases. This is a non-issue for homeschoolers. They've literally got to stretch the gambit to get to this.
Yeah. Well, there was a woman that her name's Deborah G. Stevenson. She's a lawyer for homeschool. She's been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah.
Ardent constitutionalist, very well spoken. She made such a good case for, there's already regulations. There's a parental duties law that that's under the Education and Culture, and it says all parents and those who have care of children shall bring them up in some lawful and honest employment and instruct them or cause them to be instructed in reading, writing, spelling, English grammar, geography, arithmetic, United States history, and in citizenship, including a study of the town, state, and federal government. Well, that's not being done in public school.
Indeed.
And one of the surprised me. One of the Democrats on the committee said, people in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones. Basically that was he's saying. Because the public schools are such a failure, and here they are. There's so the kids in homeschooling, their SAT scores are higher. Much more of them graduate, much higher percentage graduate.
Oh, yeah, you should see, Tom, you should listen to the numbers. I cited them at the beginning of the show. Listen to some of these. Connecticut has a state truancy rate of 20%. According to a 2023 source, this is in New Britain alone. 48% of New Britain high school students were chronically absent. 29% of kindergartners in the same district were considered truants. Truants. Kindergartners. How do you get 29% of kindergartners? Also, this is, again, I don't even understand it. 34% of Connecticut fourth graders scored at above or at the national education proficiency level in 2024. 33% of Connecticut eighth graders scored at or above the proficiency level of 24. Approximately 48% of Connecticut students in grades 3 to 8 met or exceeded proficiency standards. 48%, that's less than half. Connecticut's 4-year adjusted cohort graduation rate, they claim that's 90%, but they don't mention that they have implemented a minimum 50 policy that makes sure that no kid gets below 50% on a grade, no matter whether they show up to school or not or turn in any work.
Right. Yeah. So But it was a great thing yesterday. Like so many families showed up. The Capitol Police said there was upwards of 2,000, but I'm guessing it was much closer to 3,000 people there.
Yeah, I saw that too. Connecticut Mirror saying that too.
Like, hands off our kids! Hands off our kids! It was great. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
I think that this issue, Tom, and thank you for calling back, by the way. I think that this issue's got some legs. I don't think this is going away anytime soon. And even though this measure was voted down in 2019, I don't think it's got any legs. The fact that it's trying to use the young man's case, the Waterbury case, as a sort of that catapult to help it happen, I think this is getting voted down as well. But thank you, man. I appreciate you calling me back.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it, buddy. All right, we're going to take a break. We got more of your phone calls. Don't forget, if you want to be a recipient of the dozen bagels a month for 6 months, courtesy of Between Rounds, give us a call at 860-522-WTIC, 860-522-9842. More of your phone calls when we return. Let's get another check of the weather and traffic with Jason Caterina and Mark Christopher in the BPS Traffic Center. Hey, sir. Hey. Oh, good old Tom Shattuck there. Anyway, we're getting to your phone calls in a bit. 860-522-WTIC, 860-522-9842. Also, programming note, tomorrow, I'm expecting to hear about this James O'Keefe video that involves Jeffrey Epstein, Pfizer. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's coming out of that, so expect to hear about that tomorrow. I don't know exactly when he's releasing it, but tomorrow is supposed to be the big day. Many people are anticipating this story. I hope that you are as well. We'll talk about that. We'll also do Whack Job Wednesday. We'll talk about this bunker that's going on. In fact, Salvatore, thank you for your message. I am going to hit you up probably tomorrow, probably in the morning, and to see if you and I could talk a little about it, because Salvatore says that that he and a lot of his cohorts have been called conspiracy theorists about this, and now, of course, that's coming. That everything they've been trying to warn people about is coming to fruition, and now they don't look so crazy. Exactly my point, Salvatore, is why we're doing Whack Job Wednesday on Reese on the radio, because again, I talked about this before. I keep saying it, and if you haven't heard me talk about it, because we haven't done it in a while, I'll explain it to you. I'll sum up. I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. When I was a kid, I was inundated with conspiracy theorists. And everyone and everywhere I looked, everyone would tell you, that's because the government's doing this and they don't tell you about that. And it used to drive me nuts because I was a skeptic and I'm a cynic. And I didn't start until Mitchell Weiner, this substitute teacher. I had a math class with Miss Lefkowitz in Susan B. Anthony School in Queens. And she was out, and we got this guy named Mitchell Weiner, who's a substitute teacher. Mitchell Weiner went on to be the vice principal of Susan B. Anthony, stayed there his entire career. And again, as I mentioned before, the H1N1 virus, he was the first, New Yorker, or maybe even the first American, the first person to die from H1N1. He had also, I think he had kidney failure or something along those lines. But Mitchell Weiner was in the New York Daily News as the first person who had died of the virus, of that pandemic. I remember it vividly. Anyway, but Mitchell Weiner was the teacher substituting my math class. I remember that day because he showed us the Kennedy assassination, the Zapruder film. And I'd never seen that before. I'd never watched it. I'd heard stories about it, but I'd never watched it as an entirety. And he spent the entire class explaining to us the theory about the grassy knoll the whole time. It is the only reason why I knew this story, and every conspiracy that went with it was because of Mitchell Weiner. And now, here I am, an old guy, and everything that all of these conspiracy theorists have talked about that seemed to be coming true. And it's like a reckoning, so I can't help but talk about it now. Because I almost feel like, I'm wondering when I'm going to be sitting outside my house and all of a sudden I'm going to hear, and a spaceship is just going to be hanging out over my house. It's like, I know it. Let's get another check of the traffic and weather. Jason Caterina and Mark Christopher in the BPS Traffic Center. Mark, I got to ask. I know you don't watch movies, but okay, your theory. You got to believe in UFOs, right? You believe in aliens who have at least visited.
Sure.
Do you believe that? Come on, don't patronize me. Do you believe that they visited us? Do you believe in Roswell or any of that other stuff? Have you ever even dove into that?
You know what? I don't know if they actually visited us, but do I believe there could be another form of intelligent life out there? Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, we're just a small little part of the solar system, so.
But
yeah,
you don't believe that there's ever been visits to our Earth at all?
Sure, why not? I mean,
okay.
You know what? I did see E.T. And I loved E.T. So right there's been some visitors to Earth. Hey, if you're heading into Hartford, right?
WTIC weather.
We'd have to be awfully arrogant to think that we're the only use intelligence loosely, intelligent life in the world or in the universe here. Anyway, cloudy, mild, couple of showers. And they've been here. They live among us. You've seen They Live, haven't you? The low down to 56. If you haven't seen They Live yet, you really need to see it. Right now, very apropos for these times. Bristol at 65, Waterbury at 63, 64 at Hartford. I'm meteorologist Jason Caterina in the WTIC Weather Center.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday.
See what you done started?
I love it.
Easy. Just use it.
No.
What's up, everybody? You know who it is.
You know who it is.
You know who it is. It's Reese on the radio. Frederick Douglass of the 21st century.
It's WTIC News Talk 1080.
All right, we're back and almost out of here. Last but not least, caller coming up who will win a dozen bagels a month for 6 months, courtesy of Between Rounds, the Bagel Bakery and Sandwich Cafe. In fact, I'm going to be having dinner with some folks over at Between Rounds this week, so I'm very excited about that. Anyway, we got plenty of stuff to get into. We will get to your phone calls now. Jack has actually been on for a little bit. Hello, Jack in Glastonbury.
Hello, how you doing?
Pretty good, sir. What can he do for you today?
Hey, you mentioned your this thing about Malcolm X, and I don't know if you'd heard of the. I think I got it from Walter E. Williams, something that he wrote, where he makes a quote from Malcolm X, and I was wondering if I could quote that for you.
Sure.
Yeah, it goes like this. This is what he said. The worst enemy that the Negro has is the white man who runs around here drooling at the mouth, professing to love Negroes and calling himself a liberal. It is following these white liberals that has perpetuated problems that Negroes have. If the Negro wasn't taken, tricked, or deceived by the white liberal, then Negroes would get together and solve their own problems. I only cite these things to show you that in America, the history of the white liberal has been nothing but a series of trickery designed to make Negroes think that the white liberal was going to solve our problems.
So true. You know, Shelby Steele, if you're interested in watching a documentary, it's called, and only for this part, should you watch it. It's a documentary by Shelby Steele called What Killed Michael Brown. And Amazon wouldn't run it for a long time, and I think they're running it now. But you should be able to find it for free. It shouldn't cost you anything. It's called What Killed Michael Brown by Shelby Steele. And he talks about what you just said there, what Malcolm X pointed out. Shelby Steele talks about how his father, living in Chicago, refused to take handouts from Lyndon B. Johnson. And the quote that I'm paraphrasing, the quote of his father, he says, what would make him think that he should go to the same people who created the problem to solve them?
Exactly.
And that's, and that's what Shelby Steele, and Shelby Steele grew up. He started his career working under the Lyndon B. Johnson campaign when they set out to turn all of the homes in the St. Louis region, because it's right near Ferguson, Missouri. In the St. Louis region, he was sent there by the Lyndon Johnson administration to get people out of their homes and into the project buildings. And it was there that he learned that what they were doing were detrimental to the people, because the people, even if they lived in dilapidated homes, they owned them. They were self-reliant. Right. And he realized that was a detriment. Those people would eventually come around to fixing their homes and making them better, but ownership gave them a sense of pride. And you're so right
Exactly.
about people. You know what? It's funny, but rarely do people quote Malcolm X and that point of view, because that point of view, crazy enough, was what got him killed by his own people.
Right. When I was younger, we were taught that Malcolm X was the bad guy. The media treated him very unfairly compared to when you start investigating his life. And so that when I first saw this quote, it really opened my eyes, because I was thinking, well, he's going to say something.
Well, you
totally
think about
different.
If you think about the contrast between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. And again, I respect Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He's one of my heroes, but so is Malcolm X. But primarily understanding the two in their approach. What Malcolm and Martin Luther King Jr. were at odds with was that Malcolm X said of Martin Luther King Jr. that Martin Luther King relied on the government to solve the ailments of African Americans or blacks or so-called Negroes, as he would put it, where Malcolm X was pointing to the fact that blacks need to be responsible and accountable for themselves.
Yeah, I think it's along the lines. I don't know if you're familiar. You must be if you listen to Rush Limbaugh when Walter E. Williams would
fill in,
and he wrote these two. I guess he wrote at least two books. Growing up, Growing Up in the Black Neighborhood. I can't think of the exact name of it, and then another one on black economics. And both of those books are really good. And I think he was more of a guy thinking on being on self-reliance, not depending on the government.
Yeah, in fact, all of them, from Thomas Sowell to Walter E. Williams to Shelby Steele, all of them were always about self-reliance again. And the crazy part is right, all three of these men accomplished African-American authors, and I would say even thought leaders. If you notice, in no place known to be the so-called African or black diaspora are those three men ever mentioned. Never.
I know
mentioned.
they're blacklisted.
Ironically and purposefully.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
Much appreciated, sir. I got
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome, sir. That is a great phone call. Let's go to Howie in Meriden. Hello, Howie.
Hi, Reese. How are you doing?
Pretty good, sir. What's up?
Great show as usual, which brings me to my question. They still show Todd Feinberg on the WTIC website. When are they going to put you on there so we can listen to you and we don't get a chance to listen to your show?
Crossing my fingers, and I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks. It's a slow process, unfortunately, but it will happen soon. You are now the 9th person who's contacted me to tell me about that. I'm sure they're working on it right now. Roland's probably rolling his eyes going, somebody's mentioning it again. but
okay,
I'm sure they're working on it, but thank you.
Work and keep up the good fight.
Thank you, sir.
Love your show.
Thank you, Howie. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much. Very humbled by that. Let's go to, I will go to Stephen Waterbury. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Reese. All this time I thought it was Malcolm 10.
No, don't tell that old joke. I remember that joke in the 90s.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm an old guy, But Martin Luther King and he only met one time, from what I understand.
That is correct. That was a very famous meeting.
Yeah, I was actually going to share that quote to somebody who was a Biden fan. It's funny it came up today. The reason I'm calling is that the former Uncle Ben Rice Company is coming up with 4 new faces for 4 different varieties.
Wait a minute. Uncle Ben's Rice?
Right.
Okay.
First of all, there's 4 varieties that they got, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. I don't know. I never even heard of black rice before, but did you ever hear black rice before? It's very nutritious.
No. I've heard of brown rice, yellow rice. I've never heard of black rice.
Well, I never had it, but it is true, and they're actually going to use Jack Black to represent it. Now, for the white rice, they're going to use Casper Weinberg.
No, that's funny. That's funny.
For the light brown rice, they're going to use Julian Bond.
Wow. Hey, no one even talks about
rice,
him anymore. What's he up? Didn't he just pass away?
Oh, he passed away some time ago.
Yeah,
I guess
okay.
his father was a professor at a college, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct. You're absolutely
But
right.
Now, for the dark brown rice, instead of using Ben, they're going to use his younger, more dapper brother, Tom.
You know what? You brought up Julian Bond. I'm sorry. I got to bring up Julian Bond. That man.
Yes, please.
That man hated me, and he only spoke to me. Listen to me. I've never seen a person hate a guy so much, but I only spoke to him for 15 minutes, and I will have to tell you, Steve, it's the world record for making a person hate another person ever. This guy came to the studio.
Really?
He was there for an interview, and it was behind the scenes after the show was been over, and I laid into him. And it wasn't on purpose. It was just the fact that Julian Bond is just one of these guys who just very, very antiquated, old school, using a lot of platitudes about blacks versus white. He was a very racist guy. And
Gotcha.
For that particular moment, I sat there and talked to him, and I don't even know what came over me, but I kind of had an opportunity. I think what happened to me was I had the opportunity to confront somebody who I had watched on television and I had a problem with, and I took my shot. By the time it was over,
Gotcha.
that man was yelling at me, and I was yelling at him, and people were looking at me going, do you know who that is? And my response to it was, and I was almost suspended. I said, I don't give a damn who he is. And people were just like, what is wrong with you? Like, I wasn't even a paid on-air host, but I could not stop yelling at him because I thought he was so detrimental and such an intellectual blowhard. But yes, I never liked him.
Do you remember when he was on Saturday Night Live?
No. Was he on? It had to be back in the days.
I'm going to send you a clip. He apologized for what he had said, but I'll send you a clip later on. I think you'll appreciate it.
Thank you. Please do. Thank you, Steve. Much appreciated, sir.
Yep. Got it.
Julian Bond. Can't stand that man. Can't stand him. Let's go to our last but not least caller of the day. And it's going to be Rich from Old Sayerbrook. Hello, Rich. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good. What do you got for me today, sir?
Yeah, you were talking about underground shelters.
Yes.
A little while ago, but I was driving. I didn't hear the whole thing. But
so apparently a former George W. Bush administrative worker was on Tucker Carlson talking about a $21 trillion underground bunker that's supposed to be for the rich and the politicians should there be an extinction level event. Do you know something about this this phenomenon or this particular?
Well, not that. No, the one I was thinking about, because I didn't hear the whole conversation you had before, but my brother owns a company called Vios, V-I-V-O-S, and he bought bunkers. He bought properties in Germany and also in Kansas and Indiana, where he converted an old army base that had these bunkers there for back in the First War for putting ammunition in it. And they were all separated, and he's selling them. He's got over 1,000 customers already.
Really?
But the only problem with that is, too, these people are, say, here in California or something, and this is Indiana, and there's a nuclear war. How are you going to get there in 20 minutes? You know, that's
right.
the issue.
Now, these bunkers, if you know anything about them, do you know how deep they are?
Well, the ones he has, they're like Quonset huts made out of concrete, and they're separated. So if, like I said, he bought hundreds of them, and he's sold over 1,000 of them. And I don't have the whole scoop. I don't talk to him lately, but if anybody wants to look it up, it's VIVOS, and it's even on. There's a Netflix clip on it and everything else. My brother's talking about it, but he owns one in Germany, a 250,000 square foot underground bunker that used to be owned by the run by the Soviets back when, and he's converting them into housing and everything for thousands of people. And I know.
Okay, I'm looking at it now. So it's VIVOS, Underground Survival Shelters.
That's it.
Holy moly! Okay, I'm going to look into this.
He's been doing it for. Yeah, he's been doing it for years. Hey, when I called up, I didn't even give my name. I guess you just.
No, apparently it's kind of a call ID thing. That's with your phone service. Good. I'm going to look into this because we're doing a whole thing on it tomorrow for Whack Job Wednesday. with this whole conspiracy theory. So look, if you do get some information from your brother, please do. But I'm going to look into this so I'll have sort of a point of reference to talk about in that story. So I appreciate you. Okay, we're going to make you our
There's a whole thing on it.
Yeah, I'm on the website
on it too, and writing too. If you look down, it talks about his name and everything, Robert, and it gets in Kansas, Indiana, and also he bought a Atkinson storage facility over in no, that's in Kansas, but he's got another one over in Germany and everything else. So
okay, well stay on the line,
have a
Rich.
good day.
Rich, stay on the line. We're going to get your information so that you can get the dozen bagels from between rounds. Wow, this is actually, I'm looking at the website. It's great. Just look up VIVOS. Anyway, as I always say, radio is free, so we thank you for paying attention. Remember to keep JC in your hearts and in your minds. Sean Patrick, we love you and we miss you. Remember that panic is not planning, so plan your work and work your plan. Me, I'm Reese on the radio. You have a good night, pleasant tomorrow, and we'll see you back here for Whack Job Wednesday on News Talk 1080 WTIC. Mark Christopher, Jason Catarina, they're in the BPS Traffic Center. Good night, guys.
Hey, good night, Reese. If you're heading 84 westbound, a little slow by exit 57 in East Park.
All right, good sir.
All right, welcome back, damn it.
Southbound between 9
Yes, sir.
Road Bridge
All right,
is backed
we'll
up
see you
to
mañana.
84.
See you tomorrow.
Hey, how
man.
did your trip go, by the way? Everything?
Man, I don't want to do it no more. I can tell you that.
15 between 9
I don't think it's just not meant. I don't get any pleasure in watching a bunch of little kids dance. So.
Nor should you.
It's like I was like, man, I just want to see my daughter dance and go home. But that's not the way it worked.
The right shoulder between 36 and 35.
Right.
Use a little caution there.
God, would that
If
be
you're
good? I'll
traveling,
talk to you later.
Yes, sir.
1D up to the 84 West merge in East Hartford. Traveling 290.
All right, everybody. Thank you. I'll let everybody know what the deal is. Lori, yes, you have to go to my what's the name, Reese on the radio page as opposed to my personal page for the show now. There's a whole different change up that we're doing to the show and everything. I should have alerted everybody, but of course I did not. But I'll take care of that in the future. All right. Love you guys. Y'all be good. Stay out of trouble. Bye-bye.